morning, friends. In the last session, I was talking about the way in which Indian religion is influenced by philosophy. I was also mentioning that religion can be told in two ways. One is, okay, there is one gentleman who has seen God, who has communicated with God, and then he has given some such, orders to you, to the society. We have to follow those orders. So that is one way. There is another way, that is logically examining as to what is human nature, as to what can be the divine, and then whatever popular beliefs are there, you try to guide them. Whatever popular beliefs are there, you try to guide them. Okay, what you are doing is also right, what you are doing also is right, what you are doing also is right. So for example, an Indian, if he goes to some place in some tribal, corner in, some deep jungles of Africa, even there, suppose he finds somebody who is worshipping some tree, who is worshipping something else, he has no problem with that gentleman. He has no problem with him. He will not look down on him. He will not treat him as an inferior person. So this man also will say, okay, fine, you are doing that worship, you please do that worship. You will attain. Whatever you are seeking, you will attain. So that is the approach of, the Hindu sages. So that is the one important thing we have to see. Because in our society, we should say that we are lucky that the philosophers throughout, they guided various belief systems. Otherwise, there would have been various battles, like we have seen in the Western countries. So here, what happened was, in some corner somebody was worshipping Vishnu, some other corner somebody was worshipping Shiva, some other corner some Shakti, another corner Ganesha. They said, all these things are only only one supreme reality. You imagine or visualize any God form, but the supreme reality can only be one. So I'll explain it further as we go ahead. This is in brief. It is enough if you remember this now. So that is why the Western Indologists who came to India in right from 16th century onwards. One famous Indologist was Max Muller. You can show that slide. Max Muller's slide. What he told about Hinduism. So he said, what, have you got that slide? Slide number 11. Max Muller. You got it?
Yes.
So what he says is, what distinguishes the Vedanta philosophy from all other philosophies is that it is at the same time a religion and a philosophy. What is this Vedanta? In the last class I was mentioning about the Vedas. Veda, they were the oldest record of mankind. That is what I said. Rig Veda, for example. Rig Veda is supposed to be the oldest record of mankind, which is accepted by the whole world. Then the Vedanta, Veda plus Anta. Anta is end. Veda's end. That is Vedas, the final portions of the Veda is called Vedanta. I mentioned to you that Vedas, they also take into consideration the religious beliefs of the people. And also from there it moves on. It moves on to what is the reality. It moves on to philosophical speculation. It moves on to philosophical discussions. So in this Vedanta, the final portions of the Vedas, there are sages, somewhat like today's scientists. They have absolutely no agenda. They have no agenda to establish an organized religion. Their objective is only to find truth. So what can be the truth? So for example, if you see some Upanishads, larger Upanishads like Brihadaranyaka, so there you come across so many sages, the names of so many sages. That is, we also call them rishis. So these sages, they also have large schools. Yajnavalkya, for example, he is called a Mahashala. Mahashala means somebody who is having 1,000 students in his ashrama. So like that, there are so many Mahashalas, there are so many schools, there are so many sages who are running such huge schools. So it is somewhat like some university professors coming together and trying to deliberate on what is truth. So this is what Max Muller is a very famous Indologist. So he says that this is the distinction between the Vedanta philosophy and the other philosophies, because the philosophy has been guiding religion. So that is the picture. So that is why The Vedanta says, suppose somebody is worshipping Vishnu, somebody is worshipping Shiva, etc. All are one and the same. I told one mantra, Sab Brahma Sa Shiva Sahari Sendra Sotshara Paramaswarat. So you call in any name, it is one and the same reality. So now we come to the next question about the universe. You see, man has been wondering as to what exactly is the universe and how this universe has come about. You can go to the next slide. This slide, this is basically an introduction. It's basically an introduction to the huge time scale in which Indians talk about. The huge time scale means we don't talk about 1,000 years, 5,000, 10,000 years, 15,000 years or something like that. We talk in terms of millions of years. Hindu books, they talk in terms of millions and millions of years. So that is why one scientist, one astronomer named Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan is a very, very popular astronomer who has produced a lot many series, Cosmos, one series on TV. And also those things have come in book forms also. So he says that Hinduism, it is the only religion in which the time scales correspond to those of the modern scientific cosmology. Its cycles run from our ordinary day, a day and night, to a day and night of Brahma. Brahma means the creator. 8.64 billion years long, longer than the age of the earth or the sun, and about half the time since the Big Bang. So that is what Carl Sagan says in that Cosmos. So this is just by way of introduction. Why I am saying this is, when the Europeans came to India and tried to study our books, they were totally overwhelmed by the depth of the books. They were overwhelmed by the way the time scale in which these people were talking about, because according to them, nothing could be prior to 4004 BC. According to all these people, the Western scholars, nothing could be prior to 4004 BC. What is the significant about 4004 BC? Because according to all the biblical scholars, the scholars who studied the Bible and then who wanted to decide when the earth was created according to Bible, they all said earth was created in 4004 BC. So that was in the minds of all these Western scholars till about 18th, 19th century. Till about 19th century also, they had that only in mind, and then they wanted to fit everything in the world into that biblical time scale. And then all cultures in the whole world, they wanted to fit into that biblical framework only. So that is where they were totally confounded. So they could not accept that there could be an older civilization. Of course, now the whole world has changed its attitude, like Carl Sagan himself says. But then at that time, they were having that mindset. So that is why they were very, very reluctant to give the proper time scale to fix the time of either Rig Veda or our ancient texts like Mahabharata, etc. So this is by way of introduction. So the next slide, come to slide 13. So the question is about how did the universe come about and what was the approach of the Indian sages. Got the slide? So you take, suppose a man is the observer here. Man is observing, the world around him. When he is observing the world around him, then he thinks of who is the maker. You take anything, you visualize a maker. There is an object, there is a maker. Suppose there is a pen, there is a maker of a pen. There is a pot, there is a maker of a pot. Take the simplest example of a pot. And that pot means a pot maker is there. Pot maker is not the same as pot. Maker is different, and then the pot is different. For pot, clay is the material. So there is some material which is there, and there is a person, an intelligent person who is away from the material, who is apart from the material, who is distinct from the material. So there is a maker and there is a material. So this clay is called the material cause. So there is a small technical word, it is called the material cause. And then the person is called the intelligent cause. The intelligent cause and also the material cause. So now the question is, if God has made the whole universe from some material, then obviously he is different from the universe. taking the example of a potter and the pot, if you say that God has made this universe from some material, then he is obviously is apart from the say universe. He may be there sitting somewhere in the high skies, and then he may be supervising all this. He may be just like a somebody that rope artist. He may be pulling all these strings and then making all the people dance. So that may be so there. He may be a highly powerful man, but still he is limited. Limited in the sense he is some limited personality. Apart from him there is something else. So we can't say that God is infinite. God is infinite, we cannot say. Whereas our books say that God is infinite. God cannot be say a limited person. So limitedness we can understand in this sense. We are all, you and I, we are limited in three manners, in three ways rather. That is, limited by space. That is, I am so say about 5.6 inches, 5 feet 6 inches tall. I weigh so many kilos, and if I am compressed into some sort of volume, I occupy a particular volume. In terms of volume, I occupy a particular volume. Beyond this, I am not there. Beyond this, I don't exist. So that is number one, I am limited by space. Any object, any human being, any object is limited by space. Similarly, God also would be limited by space, because if there is God away from the material, then limited in time also. I am in 21st century now. I may not be there I will not be certainly there in 22nd century. I was of course there in 20th century because that century was just over. So I am there for only a small period of time in the whole gamut of millions and millions of years, in the whole scale of millions and millions of years, and that too, there is no end to that. So we are limited by space, we are limited by time, and we are also limited by being a particular person. I am here, I can't be you, I can't be something else, I can't be somebody else. So limited by desha, kala, vastu. That is what they say in Vedanta. That is limited by space, limited by time, and limited by being a specific object. So this sort of limitation should not be there in God. God is something which is all pervading, all powerful, all say the knowledge itself. So if we see that if God has to be like that, he has to be something different. He is not something like a pot and a pot maker, clay and a pot maker. So come to the next slide. So all such discussions they went on for the sages to say. For example, there is an Upanishad. So I am showing you this Prasthanatraya. Prasthanatraya. You are able to see? Prasthanatraya means the three parts. So one is Upanishad, one is Veda, and another is Bhagavad Gita. We need not go into that, I will tell you slowly. This Prasthanatraya, in this book there are some Upanishads. Upanishad, I told you, Upanishad is the final portions of the Vedas. So here there is one Upanishad called Taittiriya Upanishad. This Taittiriya Upanishad is part of this Yajurveda. I will show you this Taittiriya Upanishad. Yeah. This is this Taittiriya Upanishad. This Taittiriya Upanishad, and this is the second portion, 2-1. You can Google search and find out Taittiriya Upanishad 2-1. 2-1 means the second part, the first mantra, the first chanting. Mantra means a chanting. So the first mantra tells about this universe, how this universe, what is this supreme reality, and how this universe has come into existence. So this is something striking. I will just say, I can read this mantra also. It says, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. What we call the supreme reality is actually existence, consciousness, and infinitude. Existence, consciousness, and infinitude. So from that, initially the whole space emerged. So that is what it says. Tasmadva etasmadatmana akashas sambhutah akashadvayuhu vayoragnihi agnerapah adbhyah pruthivi. Okay, I can go on reading, I need not do that. So I just wanted to tell you that in what is called Yajurveda, this is a portion of Yajurveda. There are 4 Vedas, I will also explain slowly. So in one Veda, at the end of that Veda, this Upanishad is there. That is a philosophical discussion. Veda, I told you, the initial portions they talk about the religious aspect. Slowly it goes on to meditations. Slowly it goes on to philosophical deliberations. So this philosophical deliberation is about what is this whole universe. So there he says, initially that space emerged from that supreme reality. And how that space emerged, again, of course, I am going to tell you that also. So tentatively, you just take it that the first emergence or a first appearance or first manifestation was that of space. Then Akasha Dvayuhu. So you see that slide. Are you with that slide 14? Yeah. So it says, God as we call it, and we don't say it is God, because when we say God, we are referring to a male person. So this supreme reality is neither male nor female nor anything. It is not a person at all. It is not a personal God. It is something of the nature of pure consciousness. It is something of the nature of pure existence. It is something which is infinitude itself. So that way, this God, that is why we refer to it as it. We have to give some name. So in English they say God, we call it it. In English, of course, they refer to a personal God. There is a personal God who is there sitting in the sky, who is supervising all human activity. He is the controller of heaven, hell, he is the controller of all things, etc. So our visualization is not like that. At an ordinary man's level, it is there. At an ordinary man's level, somebody who is believing in some Vishnu, Shiva, etc., that is there. But at a higher level, at a philosophical level, when you come to the real truth, our books, they talk about 2 levels. One level is for an ordinary man who is believer in some system. So somebody who goes to a temple and then says, okay, I am worshipping this Vishnu, I am going to Vishnu Loka after my death, so and so heaven. That is at a different level. But philosophical level is different. At the philosophical level, what we say is, this supreme reality has nothing to do even with the act of creation. Some emergence, some phenomena, it has come into existence. And that phenomena, initially that space has come into existence. And then Akashad Vayuhu. Vayu means air. From that space, another emergence was air. Then Vayoragnihi. From space emerged air, and from air emerged fire. So this is what this book says. Then the next slide, please, 15, slide 15. Slide 15, from fire emerged water. Fire slowly became water. And then that water, Agnerapah, Adbhyah Pruthivi, that slowly transformed into a solid matter. Slowly, it was a fluid state. Whatever was in a fluid state, it came into, say, a solid state. Adbhyah Pruthivi, Prithivya Oshadhayah. The next is, from that solid matter, all this plant kingdom, Oshadhayah. Oshadhi means a plant kingdom. The whole plant kingdom which we see, that emerged. And then that plant kingdom itself became the sort of food. That plant kingdom itself became some sort of food, and then some small, life forms. Of course, plant also is life. Some more intelligent life has come into existence in the form of a being, a living being. That is Adbhyah Pruthivi, Prithivya Oshadhayah, Oshadhibhyo Annam. Annam means food. And then Annat Purushaha. From that food, which is nothing but all this plant kingdom, from that, this Purusha. Purusha means any living being. Purusha is not human being as such. Normally, when you say Purusha and Stri, it refers to a man, a masculine, a person. But in Vedanta, Purusha doesn't refer to a person. Purusha refers to any living being, starting from an amoeba to some dinosaur. So that is what is a Purusha. So any living being in which there is something called a mind, any living being in which there is what is called some body, some accumulation of material from outside, from the 5 elements, that is 5 elements means the same earth, water, fire, etc. There is an accumulation of material, and then there is what is called an intelligence. So this is called, so even amoeba and even bacteria have some intelligence. So like that, from starting from amoeba to say dinosaur, we call it this Purusha. So that is how this living being with consciousness, it has emerged. And then of course the final message is that all this is not meant to describe the way in which the this evolution has taken place, but all this is meant to say that there is nothing other than that supreme consciousness, and the human being, as you say, he is nothing but that manifestation of that supreme consciousness only, and that consciousness only is reflected in your mind. So that is what it says. That is the final thing. We need not go into that. Tentatively, let us see the process of evolution, if you take it as it is. So why I am saying this to an ordinary school student is that an ordinary school student today is exposed to so much of science. So he can also read say our religious texts. He can happily read our religious texts, he can understand. So an ordinary school student here today is more informed than a scientist of olden days, because the scientists of olden days, the science had not yet developed at that time, the human knowledge had not yet developed at that time. Now that the human knowledge is there at our fingertips, we have so much of information. So what is there in so-called serious texts of Hinduism, that is something called Upanishads, which were only told to very grown-up people, I am able to tell the youngsters because they are able to grasp it. You may be knowing the story of Newton. Newton said, I am saying about all these things because I am able to see more than my predecessors, because I am standing on the shoulders of the giants. I am like a pygmy standing on the shoulders of giants, he said. A man like Newton, Sir Isaac Newton, he says, I am a pygmy standing on the shoulders of great giants, so I am able to see more farther. So a modern student, not that he is more intelligent than the greater scientists of olden days, but he is exposed to so much of information and he is able to understand it. So it is not difficult for me to communicate to the say even school students today. So that is why I am telling about Upanishads, which are normally told to, which used to be told to grown-up people. So anyway, so this thing, if you see the way in which our Upanishad describes the origin of this universe, if you want to use that word, this is the way. So initially there is nothing but pure consciousness, and in that pure consciousness this space has emerged, and that space, from that space you got some air, and then that air there is this fire, maybe some hot air, so you visualize in that fashion, that has molten, and then it has come into a molten form or a fluid state, and then from fluid state to solid state, and from solid state to say all this plant kingdom, and the plant kingdom itself produces some living beings. So this is why, this is, if you come to the next slide, how did continued form? You will see, come to the next slide, what do you find it here? And our Vedic sage who told about it, he was not aware of Darwin. He was not aware of Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. But out of pure, say, process of thinking, pure process of logical thinking, they were able to say certain things which are not refuted by science, and on the other hand supported by science. So this is something similar, very, very similar to the theory of evolution. And it also looks similar to the nebular hypothesis. Children, they are also, nowadays the school students are also aware of the fact that there is what is called a nebular hypothesis. Initially there were just hot airs, some nebula, and those hot airs, and then from the hot air means fire, air and fire. Slowly it became into a fluid form, slowly it became solid matter, and then all this, say water, earth and all these things, they have taken place. This is what is nebular hypothesis. So this is a hypothesis about the origin of the universe. And what Rishi says is not contradicting it. What our sage says is not contradicting it. So what do we find ultimately? Our texts they accept two levels of reality. At a lower level, it accepts Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva, etc., etc. Okay, if you worship Vishnu, you will go to Vishnu Loka. If you worship Shiva, you will go to his world, his heaven, his version of heaven, let us say. If you worship Vishnu, you will go to Vaikuntha, that is Vishnu's version of heaven. If you go to Shiva, you will go to Kailasa, which is Shiva's version of heaven. So something like that. So if you worship, say, Krishna, Krishna is another form of Vishnu, but then Krishna's followers, they say, there is another loka called Goloka. That is his version of, say, heaven. So Vedanta does not reject all those things, but then goes beyond. Vedanta does not, I can't say does not accept. The Vedanta goes beyond that, and then it says, beyond that is nothing but pure consciousness. And how that pure consciousness is connected to this, that again is a big question. That is the biggest question. So the next slide, if you come to that. So now we have come to a point where we are seeing that there is a popular belief, religion. There is popular belief is religion, which is having its own idea about a God. And then Vedanta, that is philosophy, it is giving a slightly different idea about God. Maybe we'll continue this in the next class because this requires some elaboration. So because the religion's idea of God is different, because religion talks about God in terms of somebody, some personal God who is there in the form of a commander-in-chief or something like a cosmic super cop, more powerful than the American president and the Russian president and all presidents of all countries put together. So a cosmic super cop who is who may be having a form, who may not be having a form. A form does not matter so long as he is having some functions. So a God with functions. So a God function means some guna, some attributes. In Sanskrit we call it guna. Because he is having some attributes or some functions, we call it saguna. Saguna means somebody who is having some sort of attributes or some functions. So that is one level. But Vedanta is at a different level. There are no such attributes in that supreme consciousness. So we'll see that in the next class. Thank you.